Our next session is on how we best support positive business action. And then we'll have an in-depth look at the world of breakthrough innovation in business models and technology. So that's a shift I want you to get ready for. So to get us started, let us meet a couple of young leaders who are working really, really hard to positively change the mindsets of business and consumers alike. Be really, really warm. Show plenty of sustainable and durable love. For Mr. Ricardo Garay, who is a student at the Copenhagen Youth Fashion Summit, who will introduce our next speaker. Willkommen, bienvenue, caribou, Ricardo. Love, plenty of love. Come on, more love, real love. Ricardo, that's for you, okay? For you, man. They love you.
Thank you. Hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. The name of this session is The Changing of Mindsets. And that's exactly what over 100 students, amazing students, from around the globe gathered to do in 2016. At the Youth Fashion Summit taking place in Copenhagen, I was honored to be among them. Together, we used the SDGs as a framework where we created demands for the fashion industry. But that was just the beginning. In 2017, we met again this year to change those demands into a resolution. This resolution focuses on the SDGs, such as making sure that the fashion industry doesn't just pollute water, but actually ensures that those around the world have access to clean water. It seems like something that we should be focusing on doing. We also ensured and thought of ways that fashion could be a way to prevent poverty. Also very important. I myself, as a fashion student, envision a world, a future for fashion, where it can be, instead of it being one of the most detrimental, one of the most polluting, instead it's actually one of the most positive, regenerative forces for business. That sounds like a future that I want to be a part of. And in order to change this mindset, we really need to start focusing on changing business, changing the way that we produce, the way that we communicate, the way that we communicate with consumers, such as innovative online platforms. A woman that I'm very proud to present, Maxine, Bédat, is actually one of the most impressive entrepreneurs that I've been speaking to today that is actually doing exactly that. Her innovative platform, Zady, is a meeting point where people can come and conscientious consumers can actually come and learn about the artisans behind the clothing and really connect and get an authentic story about how our clothing is produced. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Maxine Bédat.
Thanks so much, Ricardo, for that very kind introduction. My name is Maxine Bédat. It's really such an honor to be here with you today, speaking at the UN Global Compact Leaders Summit. So while my day-to-day now revolves around the fashion and apparel industry, my story actually begins here at the UN, within the UN family. My very first internship was at the UN Foundation, and I enjoyed that work so much that I actually came back to the UN a second time to work at the Belize mission to the United Nations. I found that work so moving that I then came for a third tour of duty, working at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda when I was in law school. And it was, in fact, during my time at the ICTR in Tanzania that really inspired the work that I do today. On my weekends away from the tribunal, I use the time to travel and get to know that very beautiful part of the world. In a market, I had come across a basket, and that's really where it started. And I was so moved by how beautiful the basket was. I had these visions of bringing together a whole collection and bringing them back with me to America to put on my walls. So I went on this quest to find the town where this basket was made. And I go along this journey and I arrive at this town outside of Arusha, and I see a river and I see reeds drying along the banks of the river. And then I saw this man feverishly using his hands, weaving this perfectly formed basket, all with this incredibly intricate design, and he was doing it from memory. Now, to give a little context of why this was so shocking and why I just found this to be so magical, I was born and raised in Minnesota, which is in the middle of the country, right bordering Canada. It is known for many things. It is where the first enclosed mall in the United States ever was, and it is now where the largest mall in the United States is, called the Mall of America. So I knew how things were sold, and I knew how to buy things, but I had never actually seen the other side, where it was made. And it was this lens of this world, this awe that I had for how something comes from a source, is then created by human hand into something beautiful that it became an obsession with me. How do all of the things that we purchase and consume and engage with, how do they come to be? And so I began to research really aggressively about where does our artisanal goods come from, and then where do our textiles come from, and finally led me down this path to the clothing that we wear and I wear. So unlike my basket, the supply chain of the apparel industry is long, global, and opaque. A t-shirt may start its life in an oil rig in Saudi Arabia, be processed into yarn in India, dyed and woven in China, cut and sewn by women in Bangladesh, and then sold in a retail location in California. But that's not the end of its life. It may be worn for a few times, let's say in Oregon, donated, then resold again and worn in Kenya, and finally discarded there, perhaps by being burned for energy or thrown into the waste system. But along each step of the supply chain, people and planet are impacted. This is where I'll use my notes. Apparel is a massive $2.5 trillion industry, with some reports showing 1 out of every 6 people on the planet working in some part of the apparel supply chain. 75% of apparel workers are believed to be women, and of those, 98% are not receiving a living wage. As a result of this race to the bottom, apparel industry is rife with child and modern-day slavery. The environmental cost is also no less shocking. It's an industry that uses 25% of all chemicals globally, is responsible for 70 million trees being logged annually, is the second greatest industrial polluter of water, has greenhouse gas emissions greater than the aviation industry, and all of these precious resources are going into clothing that people are now, on average, wearing only 7 times before getting rid of them. When I discovered these statistics during my Google searches, it all just seemed really crazy to me. The clothing that I love so much has such a massive impact. How come I hadn't been told about this impact? And then, now that I knew all of this, what could I do about it? And it was from this that, together with my friend from high school, we concocted the plan for our company, Zady. At the time, I'd recently finished my law studies, and I have to say I was not some natural-born entrepreneur. I was painfully shy and was, in fact, terrified of the idea of public speaking. But I also did not want to let my fears and anxieties get in the way of creating something that I thought was really needed in the world. So we launched Zady to tell the story behind our clothes. In our own collection, we developed sustainable supply chains with the farm all the way through to final cut and sew. And in telling the story of our products, we don't lead with guilt, but instead invite our community to be transformed by the magic of how sheep's wool in Oregon gets transformed into the skirt I'm wearing today. Along the way, we share with our community through Instagram, on our website, through our packaging, or on the TED stage, how their clothing choices can be a major driver in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We have found that people want beautiful product, they want to be informed, and they like a good purchase that makes them feel great. There really is an exhaustion in the accumulation of so much stuff, and as the wildly successful book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo indicates, so many of us are looking for solutions to take control of our consumption habits. And through the work that we've done with Zady, We've built a brand, yes, but more importantly, along with other citizens, NGOs, and companies represented in this room today, we are building a movement. A global movement that engages the everyday citizen to see their critical role as people who vote at the polls and then also vote every time they use their hard-earned money when they make a purchase. And today we're partnering with academic institutions, foundations, and other NGOs to see how we can work beyond our own individual companies and come together as an industry to align with the Global Compact's 10 principles and the Sustainable Development Goals. As we are reminded, there are fewer than 5,000 days left to achieve these goals, and my industry certainly has a ways to go. But there are a generation of people excited to roll up their sleeves and create that future that we want to live in. I have come to understand that change isn't miraculous. It comes from each of us conquering our own fears to raise our voices. And enormous shifts happen not from one event, but the accumulation of many small changes. And as my very wise South African mother has always told me, how do you eat an elephant, Maxine? One bite at a time. I look forward to dreaming, working, and innovating with all of you, this global community, to align with the 10 principles and together achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you.